Welcome to our daily reflection for this Wednesday, November 19th. And as we're going through this week, the readings are a bit sobering. There's persecution, but there's lessons that the church wants to give us in the persecutions of the past and the trials and the ordeal. And in the gospel today, Jesus talks about a master going into a far country, but he comes back and he's going to have an accounting with his servants. And of course, that's a parable for Jesus. He goes into the far country. He ascends to the right hand of the Father, but he will come back and he will demand an accounting of how we were faithful with the talent and the gifts he gave us. And then we see in the story of 2 Maccabees today, one of the most amazing saints and heroes of the Old Testament. And it comes at the end of the Old Covenant, but that's where we find the greatest fidelity and heroism of the Jewish nation. And here we have a mother with 7 sons, and she's a widower, and all 7 of her sons are going to be tortured and killed and executed in one day. So you talk about a day of grief for this woman as she watches her sons die. And after the 6 older brothers are horrifically tortured and die, out of zealous fidelity to the law of God, which is amazing, she is still courageous. She doesn't give in to her feelings, her fears. She doesn't cling to temporal goods. That is, oh, my sons must live in this life. No, she has a faith, and she believes in the resurrection of the dead. And so she has faith and hope for her sons. Even though they die horribly now, she knows that God can raise them from the dead and will raise them for all eternity. And so for a brief time of suffering, she holds out hope. And that's so important. And the lessons here is that she bore it courageously because of her hope in the Lord. Hope is a key theological virtue. We must nourish hope if we are to be brave, if we are to have courage. Without hope, there is no courage, my friends. And so that is a great lesson in that first reading that she models for us. And then she also models that this kind of relativism, a Christian Jewish relativism. In other words, what do I mean by that? She relativizes temporal goods, even the good of life. You know, it's not absolute. If we have to die in order to be faithful to God, so be it. Life is a good, but it's not an absolute good. We can give up our life and fidelity to God for the sake of the absolute good of serving and obeying God. And that's what her last son, she encourages as she speaks in the language of the Hebrews. She speaks to her last son and says, look, I don't know how you came about to be in my womb. I didn't really create you, I bore you, but God who created you out of nothing can recreate you. That is an incredible faith in the resurrection. And then, you know, inspired by his mother, he tells the people who are torturing and he's bribed, by the way, by the king with great gifts and positions. And he says, I won't obey you, I will only obey God. And I will obey the commandment and the law of God. And then they, of course, torture and kill him. But he warns them, you won't escape the hands of God. And that is what we give witness to in the world. The wicked will not escape the hands of God. God will have justice in the end. And we need to hold out and persevere, even in the midst of tribulation and testing and persecution, that God will win in the end. And by that faith and by that hope, we will be able to endure and love God faithfully throughout any trial that happens here and now. So let's imitate this wonderful woman, who I think becomes the greatest prefigurement of our Blessed Mother Mary, because Mary is able to see her son tortured and executed, and yet she holds out the hope and faith in God and in the resurrection. And we should do likewise. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.